It was a smoky wake-up call for residents in downtown Moose Jaw. Even hours after fire crews doused down this building, bright orange flames were still creeping out the windows.
Oh my God. I just looked at it and I was just sick. There was black smoke pouring out of there. There was gray smoke and it was just coming out in curls.
This was the roof early this morning, completely engulfed in flame. Officials say they responded to a call for an alley fire. They were surprised to find a blaze inside as well. They evacuated the 8 suites immediately. The main floor was an antique shop, not open for the day.
The attached buildings there are businesses as well, and they were vacant at that time. There isn't a further apartment building attached as well further down the street. Those were all evacuated.
No injuries have been reported, and so far no one has filed a missing persons report.
Fire officials say the wind really worked in their favor today. As you can see, that smoke is moving towards the southeast. That's away from the apartment building on the other side, away from businesses on that strip, and moving towards the industrial area of town.
Officials can't outline a cause yet, though many people in town have formed opinions.
It's also kind of suspicious because it's near the multiplex here, and they're trying to look for parking lots and that.
It was a beautiful heritage building. He never had the heritage designation on it because he wanted to fix it up. But he could have had the heritage designation on it. It had been the Mason and Riche piano building. So it's a sturdy building. It was meant to hold pianos.
Not sturdy enough to handle this blaze that caused a roof to cave in and floors to fall. Fire and police continue to investigate. Molly Thomas, CBC News, Moose Jaw. Swift speed and immaculate height. It's here on the tarmac where the miracle of flight happens.
The first one was the harmonization of regulations.
But today, it's in this boardroom where ideas are taking off. Aviation experts from around the EAC are in Kigali to bring their opinions to the table. On deck, a study of the UFIR, the Upper Flight Information Region. The aviation study has already taken place in 3 countries, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. Now, Rwanda and Burundi joined the EAC late, and so they have some catching up to do. Organizers hope the meeting gets everyone on the same page. The main objective? To efficiently manage upper airspace. That means any area over 24,500 feet.
If we're able to have more coordinated control of our airspace, then it will be easier as aviation activity increases in the region to manage more planes above that airspace, to have shorter routes for pilots to be safer and speak with fewer control centers.
After the meetings, the groundwork will take place. Rwanda's airport will be assessed and evaluated to see if UFIR standards are feasible. The change could revolutionize the aviation industry in East Africa. The full study is due out next year. Implementation at least 2 years down the road. But for now, the sky's the limit as experts pencil in plans for a landlocked country. Molly Thomas, RTV News.
Status from Saskwater is still the same.
Greg Hoffert's phone is ringing off the hook. He's wading through questions from residents of his RM who now have lakefront properties.
I've never seen it this bad. There's folks who have lived here for longer than I have, and it's one of the worst ever.
41 millimeters of rain has resulted in the second flood of the season. If you travel further east, the Souris River spreads its destructive reach.
As you can see, the water is creeping dangerously close to houses in this area, and it's expected to get worse. The Saskatchewan Watershed Authority said the Boundary and Rafferty reservoirs were at peak levels, and so they had to let some of that water out. That means another 1.5 meters of rising water.
They kept telling us there was lots of room in Rafferty. There's lots of room in Rafferty, and we don't even know if we should believe them anymore.
Sandquist isn't taking any more chances. She's packed up and ready to roll out if alerted. Others are prepared, but a bit more resilient.
And when do you think you're going to leave?
As soon as I have to. I'll stay here as long as I can.
Emergency response crews are teaming up with locals to halt the flow. These workers say they pack 100 bags each half hour, a temporary solution to what residents call a scary reality.
It's really frightening to go to bed at night because, excuse me, because the dams are so full and you just don't know what's going to happen with them.
All residents can do is hope for the best and prepare for an evacuation call. Molly Thomas, CBC News, near Estevan. You might call the Lady Cougars a dynasty, the kind of team that makes you cringe when you see them on the schedule. A force to be reckoned with in the late 90s. Since 2001 alone, 9 trips to the national championships. For the past 6 years, the women have been in every CanWest final, finishing with a big win in Calgary just a few weeks back. Still, only one banner takes home top spot.
One of my most favorite Cougar memories was actually the year that we won our 2001 national championship. The buzzer goes off and all of us are just jumping in a mountain in the middle of the court, embracing my good buddy Phoebe in a hug, and I can just remember the huge feeling it was to really make history that day.
This was no Cinderella story.
Immediately after was joy of accomplishing something that we had set out to do for so many years, and then happiness for the athletes to see them out on the floor and knowing they would never forget what they were able to accomplish as a group of young women.
That win stems from years of tradition, women that trailblazed the way back in the 70s.
1978, 79. We were still Cougettes.
The Cougettes?
Yeah.
So it was a different team.
Yeah.
Meet Betty Fornwald, formerly Betty Hofert, an academic All-Canadian and at one time the Cougar Outstanding Athlete of the Year.
Everything looks different, and they got the long socks.
Long,
that was
yeah,
the
long
style.
socks, long sleeves.
What the heck are these? I don't know if this is for a child.
No, they were practice shorts.
The uniforms have sure changed, and the game has switched gears too.
They're kind of tiny.
It's funny because basketball shorts now are, all the girls are wearing them past their knees.
I know. I'm not sure what the past the knees thing is about. If you got good legs, you can wear these. The basketball got smaller for women, right? So you've got a small ball, so it's lighter, it's easier to shoot. Shortly after that, in the mid-'80s, the three-point line came into play.
But beyond that three-point arc, a specialization in sport as well.
Brings back memories. I can smell the sweat.
It's not the same game Phoebe Desamin remembers. She only started playing basketball in grade 9. Now as a coach, she knows that would rarely cut it.
Younger athletes are asked to compete at a way higher level. I look at when I played the first year on provincial team, that was a U17 team. So these were 16 and 17-year-olds. And now we're watching 14 and 15-year-olds do what we did.
Simone, you've got a few awards over your time.
I've got a couple.
Even Simone Bouchard, arguably the best player to grace the Cougar program, didn't focus on one sport until university.
Basically every season was a different sport, and so by the next time basketball season rolled around, I was fired up and excited for basketball season. It's a good thing because they're getting so much better, they're stronger, they're faster, they're tougher, but I mean there's a lot of injuries too.
Heels up! Working against that is Czech import Maya Kralovsova. She's developed a strong girls training program to focus on the body more than basketball.
We're gonna squat down. Weights are important, but explosiveness, speed, agility, those are almost more important sometimes.
The other part I think that's very important to mention is sort of that mental development and mental capacity building in athletes. And as a coach, look at the game a lot differently and realize these are still very young people. And even though their muscles might be developed, they might be stronger, their mental capacity is still at that developmental age.
Christine Stapleton agrees. Hailed by many as the coach that branded women's basketball in the Queen City, she left the Cougar program in 2002 only to take on a job with Canada Basketball.
The second youngest athlete at the London Olympics was Natalie Achonwa. She started training sport specifically for basketball when she was 15 years old. Basketball is a late maturation sport. Women around the world are 28, 29, 30 years old and achieving at that Olympic level.
27-year-old Sarah Ahmed is a Muslim dentist whose own life has been forever altered by this war.
It's gotten smaller. It's gotten smaller now with medicine and visiting the doctors and giving him medicine, but it's still there.
Like many young professionals, Sarah is based in Baghdad. She expected to work in her own dentistry clinic. That is, until she saw the suffering.
When I first came to this camp, it was empty. A day after I came to this camp where it was empty, there was about 10,000 people in this camp.
10,000 in one day.
In one day.
ISIS's bloody rampage last summer forced 500,000 to flee their home within months. Many Iraqi families have had to move 3 or 4 times. Thousands now find themselves waiting, hoping for some help from the international community.
They are housed either with host communities or they are housed in abandoned schools, abandoned hospitals. For many of them, the food vouchers they are receiving are the only means for them to keep a bare minimum going for them food-wise.
Due to a lack of funding, that food voucher has dropped significantly.
It's rice for the house, it's sugar, and tomatoes.
Once $25 US per person, family members must now survive off $16 each a month. It makes shopping more stressful for fathers like Fawzi.
So what do you not buy anymore that you used to buy before?
انت هسه شنو ما تشتري قبل جد؟ والله كل نفس It's the same, but not a lot like before.
Do you have to ration your children? Do you have to tell them to eat smaller portions?
He's saying I can't tell them that because they are waiting me just to bring them this candies, so I can't just tell them don't eat it.
But Fawzi is one of the lucky ones. Only 32,000 families in the KRI make the food voucher list. That's nowhere close to the almost 1 million displaced in that area.
Last week we have around 1,000 family. They came from Al Anbar due to the conflict there. But sorry, we don't have anything to do with them till now.
There's not enough funding for those families, so they are living off whatever they have or whatever they brought with them.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's a sad reality for a problem that shows no signs of slowing down.
And this is really the poorest of the poor because the people that could afford have gone off and found places to rent.
But those people here actually either have nothing to begin with or they had something there, you know, back home in Nineveh, which is like a car or a house. And here in the Middle East, this is like a big thing. If you have a car, this is what you own. This is your own life. And they left
that all away.
Exactly. Those people here, they would beg you for $1.
The heat makes it worse with sweltering temperatures that will soon reach plus 50 degrees. Amidst the hopelessness, you can't help but notice the children drawn to Dr. Sarah.
Look at your little following of kids around here.
Here in Iraq, it's less common to, you know, hug the children or give them love, and they are not used to this. Especially like most of these kids, they have like skin problems, they have like lice, they have scabies, and you know people try to stay away from them because they are scared. But I'm not scared.
Some would call her fearless. As a university student, Sarah stayed in Iraq when her family fled following the U.S. invasion.
They are fighting over my left side. She's like, this is my side, she's telling her. And I was like, it's all your side, so it's all right.
Her parents beg her to leave the war zone, but she is fully committed to these children and her country.
ISIS has threats on your head. Other militia groups have threats on your head. Are you not scared?
Sometimes I get really scared. To tell you the truth, I'm not perfect, but what I mean, when my time comes, it comes. That's it. I have a belief that if I am to die in that day, and those people, I will. But until then, I am committed to like work my full, you know, potential to my fullest to provide for the people, for my people, until that day comes.
What's even more interesting to me, Lorna, though, I took a look at the projections that the Pew Research Center looked at in terms of religion in the future in France. And so if we take a look at this chart here, so in 2050, when we're looking ahead, the Christian population is going to actually decrease by about 10 million people. The Muslims are the pink dots, and you can see that increase by about 3 million. There's a huge population boom there. And most interesting, though, to me are the green dots. Now, the green are what researchers call the unaffiliated. And this is going to go from 17 million to 30 million. That's almost a doubling in size.
So, Molly, what we're going to see happening here is that those people of no religion are actually going to get just as prominent as the Christian heritage in France, even go past it a bit. How do you think the attack in Paris now will reflect onto these projections?
It's probably the hardest question to answer. I mean, we just don't know. The Paris attacks are unprecedented. This is an outlier in terms of, we haven't seen this much violence since World War II. But what we do know is that French Christian leaders are seeing a change like never before. Take a look. French colors of freedom light up a Parisian sky, a patriotic symbol of hope to combat the darkness. But even in the daylight, that heaviness remains.
Father, we want to pray for this country.
Charles Cross and Tom Hawkins are part of a mission that started sharing the gospel in France after the trauma of World War II. The night before the Paris attacks, Tom was actually in the city praying for strangers.
Lord, we just pray that your light would brighten the light of this city even more.
He reached out to his 18-year-old waiter, Toma.
And I said, so can I pray for you? And he thought for a minute and he said, well, that my life would continue.
An eerie revelation in light of all that took place. But perhaps those conversations and prayers are all the more relevant.
Over the last 50, 60, 70 years, the French people have given up on the option of the church and the option of God as being relevant in their lives. But right now, the grandchildren and great-grandchildren of those people are realizing that, maybe grandma and grandpa gave up too much. Maybe there is something else out there.
Young people are flocking to this church replant. What started with 10 people back in 2003 now has 5 services in French, Japanese, and Arabic.
It was built in 1632, but it was Catholic church before.
It became the first Protestant church in Paris. Just before the Paris attacks, Pastor Boucaman led a series on how to help people through hard times.
We experienced that when we go in the streets and we ask people whether they want or not that we pray for them, 90% say yes. People who are less than 35-year-old, they are really open.
That presence is needed in one of the worst affected areas. La Belle Équipe and Bataclan, both within walking distance of the church. Charlie Hebdo, the site of January's killings, just 1 kilometer away. I'm in District 11 where many of the Paris attacks took place. Now we've been talking to people all over the city and they were telling us about the days just after the attack. The fear levels were just so high. I mean, people scared to go outside, people scared to talk to their neighbors, just suspicious looks at each other in the streets. But being here now, we're seeing that fear is slowly subsiding. But with that comes larger than life questions, ones that churches in this area believe they can speak directly to. Is there hunger for that spirituality in the Arabic community?
Yes. And we've seen not only after the attacks, but even before, starting from what happened in last January with Charlie Hebdo, people are starting questioning why this is happening. Who are you and what is different?
This Arabic service has people from Morocco, Algeria, Lebanon, Iraq, Iran, Syria, and Egypt. Traditionally warring nations finding harmony at church.
All over history, there is only one man who said, love your enemies, pray for the people who hate you. I feel like preaching the gospel, preaching the real life of Jesus is hope for France and for every other community all over the world.
Impulsion Church is also located near many of the attack sites. Pastor Laurent Rappi is now seeing more unity and religious tolerance in his city.
In December, we are going to come together, the Muslim leader, the Buddhist leader, and the priest, and me, to read some parts of the scripture. So I'm going to read the Bible.
In City Hall, you're going to read the Bible?
Yeah.
It's a big deal. I mean,
it's a big deal, exactly, yes.
As the weeks pass and danger levels drop, sometimes a sense of normalcy ushers in a spiritual conversation. For Canadian missionaries Laurie and Sheldon Rempel, their home has become a sanctuary.
In France, they love eating, they love tasty food, but they like the communion and the exchange and the relationship. I think now people are they want a way to talk about it, and they need a safe person to talk with.
The couple hopes to speak life into every person that sits down at their table.
As a Christian, I don't have to fear death, but that's the scariest thing to some people. I can ask God to just bring His peace into my heart, into my life.
If God's peace is what's needed to calm this country,
Lord God, there are great spiritual needs here.
It makes praying for Paris so much more than a passing trend. As the sun rises in Jordan, a new day does not bring new beginnings. Thousands of young Syrian students are losing hope as time passes them by.
We might return back to Syria really late, so we would have by then lost so many years.
You have to keep in mind that before the civil war, students in Syria were thriving. In fact, there was a 95% literacy rate for kids between the age of 15 to 24. Now, for women, there was even more ample opportunity. More than half of the university population were females.
Noura was just 30 days away from completing high school when her father decided to leave Syria. She begged him to let her stay so she could finish.
Were you scared though? Just you and your mom there? Your dad gone?
I was terrified because of the bombings and the shellings and the shootings. I used to cry, get tense whenever I'm studying. It's been a very nerve-wracking period for me.
Noura lived through that chaos only for the chance to become a lawyer. She longs to bring justice back to her country, but how can she do that without teachers or textbooks? Even in the city, education is stalled. This Syrian educator once poured into the minds of young engineers, doctors, and architects. Now he waits at home, seemingly hopeless.
It's a lost generation. Everyone is scattered, no more education. We're going towards a lost generation.
And what will that mean for Syria?
تشرد يعني ما في مستقبل, no future.
In a tumultuous region of the world, radical groups prey off of young people with no future. Without money, transcripts, even transportation to school, these Syrian students are stuck, standing still.
It's illegal for us to leave the camp. And if you want to study in the camp, you only get to reach the 11th grade. So it's like, what can we do?
How will the Middle East heal when thousands of dreams are disintegrating?
This is a university card.
Yes.
Mohammed was once a dreamer. Now the 23-year-old only has these papers to show for his 2 years in the classroom.
Basically, I wanted to become a lawyer since I was a child, since elementary school. That was my dream, that was my wish.
A wish that crumbled once these brothers crossed borders. It's been 3 years since Mohammed has opened a university textbook.
Psychologically, I got depressed because I knew that I would not be the person I wanted to be.
If Mohammed wants his official transcripts, he will have to risk his life and go back to his homeland. A third brother in this family is still in Syria. He stayed to study, but now he's stuck.
Your brother's risking his life to be in a place for education. I mean, do you feel the same way?
At first, one would risk for it, but then when you actually evaluate and see the whole situation, you kind of lose hope.
Even if these brothers retrieve their transcripts, the young men cannot afford university. They're technically not even allowed to work in Jordan, but they do so under the table, just to bring in some income.
I've asked about the universities here in Jordan. It would cost roughly about 2,000 JDs per year per person.
It's more expensive than in Syria. Still, if Mohammed saves enough, he'll go back. no matter what the cost.
You would start all over again if it meant you could finish university.
Certainly.
Some students like Amar come from a more affluent background.
Oh, okay, so you finished high school in Yemen
Yeah.
with a 97 in English.
Oh.
That's pretty good. That's great. That's awesome.
This may have helped pay for school in the beginning, but after 4 years, funds are running low.
I'm frustrated and depressed because university is asking for money, and I've reached the 5th month and I still can't afford to pay for it.
He fled to Damascus, then Yemen, and now Jordan for school.
Do you think it's possible to return home soon?
Going back home became a wish, just like education.
Good evening. More than 1,000 people from Wollaston Lake are living in emergency shelters tonight. The flames are still threatening the town, but thanks to an all-night rescue operation, residents are safe in Saskatoon. Molly Thomas has been following the story. She's live in Saskatoon tonight with the very latest. Molly.
Well, Jill, the good news is that residents are all out safely. One of the last planes of evacuees arrived in Saskatoon around 9:30 this morning, and we were there when it landed.
It's a safe landing to a scary situation. 1,200 evacuees are out of harm's way. They're taking temporary shelter in Saskatoon.
I haven't slept for 24 hours.
Busloads of people away from the flames that now span 4,000 hectares.
The runway was shut down, first of all, because the smoke was covering it.
4 Hercules jets and 4 Griffin helicopters were brought in by the federal government. The community only has an ice road. A plane is the only way to get in and out.
Definitely, we need a route in Wollaston, and it's a big issue, and we've been lobbying for this road for quite some time, and I hope they understand now, and the situation we're in.
The province says 15 residents are staying in Wollaston to protect their community as fire crews continue their fight.
What they're going to do is start to maintain the lines that separate the community from the fire area and allow the fire to move to the east.
Now, weather may be the saving factor when it comes to these two communities. Officials say that the wind is moving east, which is away from the homes. As well, temperatures are dropping just a little bit, and rain is expected in that forecast. Jill?
All right, thanks, Molly. The CBC's Molly Thomas live in Saskatoon tonight. And some very close.
Heard anything yesterday, or?
No, I didn't. I didn't hear anything, so.
It's the sentiment echoed down the block. Yet police cars and investigative tape line the scene of an overnight shooting.
This occurred on the street in front of a house. Again, one male was transported to hospital with gunshot wounds. He's in what appears to be serious condition.
Police were called to the 1100 block of Wascana Street just after 4 this morning, but they weren't too far away. 15 minutes before and only 9 blocks east, another shot had been fired. This one would end the life of a 21-year-old.
One female was taken to hospital at about 8:55 this morning. She was pronounced deceased. We're now working with the Office of the Chief Coroner, and this is a homicide investigation.
It's the 3rd homicide of the year. Major Crimes and Patrol are sorting through the evidence, not linking the 2 shootings just yet. But one common thread, both victims were 21. Not surprising to Scott Alexander.
Last night, I was up around 1:30 looking out the window. I heard voices, children walking by, 14 years old and under, and it's scary.
Alexander thinks there needs to be a curfew for young people, keeping them off these streets. As for the rest of the neighbors, we talked to people all the way down this block, but most of them refused to comment on camera. That's because they fear that they too might be targeted. An understandable attitude in a neighborhood where 2 shootings occurred in just over 15 minutes, and the suspects remain at large. Molly Thomas, CTV News, Regina.